Hi everybody, this is Dave Neufeld for the Best Buy Canada blog, and today I'm actually going to be talking about this pretty awesome 3-monitor setup I have going here. So to test this setup out, I was sent 3 really nice ASUS 27-inch gaming monitors. So if you're wondering, they're the ASUS TUF Gaming VG279 model. So already just alone, they're pretty nice, pretty decent gaming monitors, but when you put 3 of them together like this, now we've really got something pretty incredible going on. So on top of the monitors, I also was sent this ASUS Republic of Gamers, the ROG brand Bezel free kit. And so you can see I've got those on here as well, and I'll talk about them a little bit more later. But what they do is they kind of provide this reflective strip that you clip in between the monitors, and it should effectively remove the bezel so that you can't actually see the bezel in between monitor to monitor. So very cool. But first, what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about how I set this 3-monitor setup up using my PC. So I have to admit that I went into it a little blind. I'm at home. I use a gaming laptop, and then I plug that into an ultra-wide monitor. So that's kind of a dual monitor setup already, but one of my monitors is my laptop monitor itself. So I didn't have any experience actually setting up more than one monitor where one of the screens wasn't actually already just my laptop screen. So going into it blind, I didn't quite know how it would be set up, and what I found out very quickly was I just assumed that my gaming laptop would perform really well with multiple monitors because it's got a very powerful GPU, and I just kind of assumed that a powerful GPU meant the ability to power many monitors. And what I didn't consider but learned very quickly was, well, the power of your GPU may be important, but what's ultimately even more important is the number of output ports it has. So of course my gaming laptop only has one HDMI output, which means I can only connect one monitor to it. I don't know what I assumed how it maybe worked, maybe that there was some sort of way of chaining monitors together, but this isn't the case, at least from what I've discovered setting this setup up, is that for each monitor you actually need a output from your video card, from your GPU. So I actually went to my closet and found my older gaming PC, which is a desktop PC, which has a bit of an older GPU obviously in it, but luckily that GPU has 3 output ports. It has one of each actually, an HDMI, a display port, and a DVI port. So 3 different types of outputs, but I was able to actually hook up all 3 to a monitor. So you can see here is the back of my PC, and this is the GPU right along here. And I've got 3 cables going out, one of each connection. So there is, first on the far right here, I have an HDMI, and then there's a display port, and finally I have a DVI, and they're each going to one of the monitors here. And it doesn't matter that they're all separate, different types of connections. One can be HDMI and DisplayPort, and this last one, actually the DVI, is a DVI to HDMI. So there you have it, and ultimately using that setup I was able to output to all 3 monitors, and then from there it was actually very easy. Of course, Windows just very intuitively sensed all 3 monitors, and they were working right away. I just had to toggle the settings a little bit to make sure they were ordered the way that I intended them to order, but from there on it's a very nice setup. I've had a very easy time getting up and running from there. So then I'll just go into a little bit more detail too about the Bezel free kit. So these are pretty cool. I will say that they take I guess a really patient hand and a real eye for detail to get them just right, because to set them up, they really have to be just at the exact right angle, and if they aren't, then you can kind of see the reflection, the edge of the reflection bleeding over, And it definitely took me a long time of kind of just really finely fidgeting with the monitors to get them to line up in a way such as that I felt like I was seeing the least amount of warping or where it wasn't just lining up properly, or where I was getting a bit of a black edge. But when you can't, and you know, I'll be honest, this is my first time setting up a bezel-free kit like this, so maybe it takes a bit of practice, or maybe people who have done it more, have more experience, can fine-tune it a little easier. But for me, I found that I definitely had to really tweak and twist and push and pull them around a lot until I had them lined up in a way that I thought they looked good. And of course then, as well, you have to consider that when they do look good and perfectly lined up, it's really only from one viewing angle, so it's not like you can, you know, move your head around, because as soon as you do, the reflective surface of the bezel-free kit, the angle changes, and then it isn't quite as seamless as it would be if you're at the proper viewing angle. So here we have just a bit more of a close-up look of the bezel-free kit. So you can see it's actually pretty neat. It really does a very good job of disguising the bezel. Of course, it's not perfect. It's maybe just slightly off, but you can see when I cross my mouse over, it's really almost imperceptible. And you can, of course, see just a little, like obviously you can make the kit out, but overall it's fairly seamless and does a pretty good job on the whole of disguising the bezels. I think they're really cool, but I think they're going to be something that is probably a matter of preference. Because even when they are set up properly, I mean, there's still a little bit of a, like, you can tell that there's a bezel-free kit on there. There's a bit of warping maybe of the screen right where it meets, or I mean, you can still see the lines a bit. They're clear, but I mean, they don't disappear. They're still there, so you can still tell that they're there. So I think that it's going to be a matter of preference. Some people are going to say, wow, that's really cool for what it is. I really like that it does kind of make, like, for example, here I've got this really nice Zelda Breath of the Wild wallpaper, and when you're at the right viewing angle, it just does look really breathtaking the way that it sweeps across the whole scene. But, you know, if you're really working in between the monitors a lot and seeing where it kind of just a little bit kind of warps the picture, that sort of thing, as it crosses over, I think there are some people that might still prefer just to see the bezel, but it really is just going to be a matter of personal preference. So I would definitely recommend to anyone who's using a setup like this, like to try them out and see if they're for you. But regardless, just a really, definitely a cool accessory in the way that I don't even, you know, I'm not going to pretend to understand how the physics of it works, but the way that it uses kind of reflective surfaces and stuff to essentially make the actual thick black bezel disappear. So other than that, I mean, I guess I'll just go a little bit more into the time that I spent using the 3-monitor setup. Like I said, I'm used to just an ultra-wide monitor, which is still, you know, a lot of real estate and a lot of space, but this is definitely on a whole other level from that. It's very immersive. One of the first things I really did learn when I set it up was to give myself some space, because I did have the setup kind of closer the way that I would, like if it was just one monitor, I would typically sit, I think the distance that most people would sit from a single monitor. But once I had all three, like, immersion is great, that's one thing, but I almost found it was too much when I had it too close. It was really hard, almost like I felt like when I was looking at the side of the screen, I almost had to crane my head uncomfortably. So that's not a criticism of the 3-monitor setup, it's just something that I had to learn, was you definitely want a lot of space, and you're going to want to push it back a little bit so that the viewing area is still one kind of comfortable degree from where you're viewing it from. But and I mean, you're going to need a lot of space as well. As you can see here, I mean, I have it set up on my kitchen table right now. I have a really nice gaming desk where I typically have my PC set up, but it was not robust or large enough to handle this size of a setup. So that's another thing you're definitely going to want to consider if you're going for a big three monitor wide setup like this is to make sure that you have the proper desk and proper space to set it up, because especially with these really nice 27-inch ASUS monitors, it's a pretty big setup overall. So make sure you have enough space and make sure you have it backed up from yourself enough that you can actually enjoy the whole wide viewing angle, as opposed to kind of feeling a bit too enclosed and cramped up to the space where you really have to crane your neck to even see what you're looking at. So productivity wise though, it's incredibly handy. I mean, we're all really multitasking a lot these days, and we typically have many windows open and browsers open and video, media viewers and all those sorts of things. And a lot of us have just become really used to having to, layer and dig through tabs and kind of always be seeking and finding for active windows. So a setup like this can be incredibly handy for anyone that is really used to multitasking or having many windows open, or just needs a lot of screen real estate. I did some work for, when I was doing my day job in this setup. It was really cool because I do work with a lot of databases and SQL and spreadsheets and all those sorts of things, and it's one of the reasons why I do like using an ultra-wide monitor at home. But on this one, it was even more productive, I think, with the way that I could have, like Excel open over here and maybe a virtual machine, or sometimes I have multiple virtual machines open at once, and I could have them all kind of visible and on display in one setup, as opposed to having to, pick and choose and layer my windows and that sort of thing. So that was really cool. But of course, if you know me and from a lot of my gaming reviews and stuff like that as well, I definitely enjoy my leisure time at the computer too. So I also found this setup to be really kind of fun for relaxing and all the things that I could do kind of all at once during my gaming time. Just for example, I'll bring up some windows here. So I had an instance where I could say maybe I'm watching some Twitch. So I've got Twitch up on my one screen here, and I've got a streamer who's streaming the video game Disco Elysium. And then on another window, I actually have the Disco Elysium, the IGN wiki guide up for a walkthrough. But why would I want a walkthrough up when I'm watching a streamer play? Well, maybe because at the same time I'm actually also playing Disco Elysium myself. So kind of really cool the way that you can multitask, where you can be playing a game full screen, watching a streamer stream the game full screen, and then also looking through the wiki guide to help myself play the game. And that's not necessarily what I would always be doing, is all three the same thing, but it is kind of just one way to display the various ways that you can do it. I might be watching the hockey game or Netflix, or a Twitch streamer maybe speedrunning a whole other game while I'm playing my game, and then maybe I'm also, browsing some deals at Best Buy online or something else, or having my wiki guide up. But all in all, the point is that it's just really cool how much real estate space that you have. To take gaming even a step further, and then, as I said, I kind of had to use an older PC. I think that it could be really cool as well if you have if you have a nice gaming PC or something like that. If you're playing, say, for example, a racing game, I think it can be incredibly immersive. Like, even when I said I kind of have to back the screens up to get for them not to be too immersive, but when they are set at the proper distance, it is really a very immersive experience. And to have a game like, say, for example, where you're inside the cockpit of a race car, can just be, I think, a transformative experience with a large, wide display like this. Like, even when I do that on my ultra-wide monitor, I'm really immersed and impressed with it. So I can't even begin to imagine how immersive it would be with something just this vast. I've heard some people say that it's not the best for every type of game. A good example might be a first-person shooter. There can come a point where it might almost be too much viewing space, where if you're trying to play a first-person shooter, you might actually be at a disadvantage based on how kind of far your eye has to travel across to see like if something is happening on your far right or your far left. But that again might just be more of a personal preference thing, or something that you might want to tweak and play with and say which games you do or do not want to actually take advantage of the full area of space available to you. But just something to consider, because definitely with a setup like this, kind of being in an immersive environment experience is kind of the name of the game. So anyway, that's my experience with this particular 3-monitor setup. It's definitely very cool. It's something that I would like to play around with a lot more in the future. But all in all, I would say that a setup like this, more than anything, is really contributes to productivity. It's really helpful to have that much screen real estate available to have just multiple windows open, the way that a lot of us just tend to, more so than ever. Anyway, that's all I have for today, so be sure to stay tuned to the Best Buy blog in the future for all the latest in gaming and technology, and until next time, I'll see you again. Bye.